Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
There's just something about a company, an organization, when it's firing on all cylinders, everybody's aligned, everybody's working together. It just feels fantastic. You look at the goals, you achieve them. That probably sounds kind of foreign to you because it doesn't happen that often. Unfortunately, this guy can help make that happen in your organization if you're a team leader, entrepreneur, own a business, just responsible for a lot of people. He comes up with successful strategies for businesses. We're going to talk about team building today and how to get that done, how to make things more cohesive with the communication and such. Jeremy Berriault. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
I had a brain block, and your last name is spelled way different than it sounds.
Yes.
Yeah,
The joys of French Canadian names.
exactly. Berriault, right?
Yes.
Berriault. Got it.
Yes.
All right, Jeremy, thanks for being here today.
It's always a pleasure.
So, do you hear this a lot from people that you work with, that there is just, as much as a company tries, the connection there is sometimes a little bit lost?
Yeah, it's very common. I think normally when people build out teams or kind of get teams set up, is they don't fully appreciate the different personality types and how they can merge together. Usually, it's just okay. I need this type of person, this role, this role, this role. Okay, let's put them on a team, and away they go. And usually, like, they will be able to provide some results, but maybe not as what it's expected.
Challenging when you say, let's go back to personalities. You're always going to have different personalities. You got to put them together. When you, as a manager, identify who is who, what makes them tick, what motivates them, where do you go from there? Or is that in itself a big challenge?
That it's not a big challenge, but I think it's understanding what the different personalities and how they react and how they even to provide the right messaging to them so that they can be able to take what you're looking for, what your expectations, what your goals are for the team. And I think for the most part, if you're seen as someone that likes just that speaks up and maybe has a big booming voice, like me personally, I've been told this is like, oh, you're standoffish because of the way your voice carries or the way I look or the way I sound. And really, it's part of it is I can't control that. Nature kind of, my parents gave me my voice. My parents made me, like, I got as big as I am. But I think it's not, it's just instead of pigeonholing, it's understanding the actual individual and then providing the right messaging. Because someone could talk to me in one way, one form, provide information to me, but they shouldn't provide that in the same way of providing that information to someone else that might be maybe more inclusive or more introverted, because they won't be able to, they might see that type of information format coming in as a little more standoffish and more aggressive.
It's very challenging with those personalities. Once you've identified them, how do you bring people together? I've heard that term, team building. Sometimes it will be exercises that are done. Sometimes, happy hour, everybody gets together, or a retreat on a weekend or something.
Yeah.
I don't know if those things really work, but I'd love to hear your thoughts on it.
They work if they're done right. If the team building exercises, like for me, I've done agile transformations. There's games like the Lego game. There's a whole bunch of other games to get the team to work together and understand. But it's having them understand the different personality types, but also how to interact with each other. And I think that's where a lot of teams kind of fall in providing any sort of productivity, is that they will sit there and they will work together. They have kind of their goal, but one person would be maybe take full control or be the big booming voice while the rest of the team kind of sits back and becomes quiet. I'm working with a client right now where I'm experiencing that with those teams, and I'm helping them build out into a more functional cross-functional team, where there's, out of a team of 8, there's 3 individuals that like to talk, that like to voice their opinion and bring up. The other 5, I have to try to pull out information from them. And I
Mm.
wanted to show them like there's the psychological safety where they have every right as everyone else on the team to say what they feel and trust everyone on the team that they're not going to be either bullied or pressured, peer pressure, and like that. They can still work together and still accept each other's opinion.
I've experienced this. I've seen this many different times, and I've found that when it's people involved in sales, they're usually, in my view, more standoffish because it's like almost every person for themselves when it comes to sales within an organization. Have you seen that too?
Yes, the I've seen it where like the team would try to work together and try to provide some sort of solution, and one person who felt, in this example, one person just felt that the solution was just not the right one, and they, in the end, took it upon themselves to provide their own solution. So really, you almost have like a team of teams kind of colliding with each other, trying to fix something. And like honestly, like, that's not the right way to do things because one, you're duplicating work, and two, you're creating friction within the team. So they have to still understand like what the main goal is. What's the main goal? Like even for sales, like everyone's standoffish. Everyone wants to provide get their numbers, get obviously because they get paid by sales. But the overall goal of the company, they're all trying to achieve the same goal to help the company achieve that goal. So there's ways you can work around as a team to help each other, not only so you can thrive as an individual, but you thrive as a team.
What are some of the best practices when dealing with a team, different personalities, bringing everybody together? Let's say you have a meeting and you just want to kind of get it all out there or talk about a new procedure or whatever it is. How do you make that even a more positive experience? Because in my experience, now I do a lot of independent work, don't have to deal with that so much anymore, but it would always be like, oh, Dave wants to have a meeting at 3 today. Oh boy. All right. It's everybody perceives it as a negative.
Yeah, I think the starting off, I think one of the best thing I've seen teams do and work with is create a team charter. So it doesn't have to be, and when I say charter, like a team charter or something like that, people think, oh, it's like a 500-page document or like a multi-page document. Really, it could just be a one-page document with a set of rules. Okay, this is how we approach the meetings. This is how we work with each other. This is here are our values. We believe in quality and trust in each other and psychological safety, and you put that team charter together, and then once the team agrees on that, then
Mm.
everyone's accountable for each other on that. So when you have that type of meeting, you shouldn't have that. It's like, oh geez, Jeremy scheduled another meeting, I don't want, like, eyes roll, and I don't want to, like, they're kind of dragging their butt in. They understand this is how the meeting is going to work, this is how the team is going to work together, and we get to the end, we have our solution, we have our goals. And I think one outside of that, you put a cadence on and a time box on all your meetings. So if the meeting is scheduled for an hour, it does not go past an hour.
Okay.
It's you set that time limit, and it's like, all right, we're coming up on the hour. What's our outcomes? What are action items? And then you write them down. Okay, everyone go away and take care of their action items. And I think that's probably one of the key things where people don't like those type of team meetings where, yeah, okay, it's scheduled for an hour, but we know it's going to take two or
Mm.
longer. So I think that the team charter along with a time box and whatever you're doing, that will set the guidelines for the team on what they're going to achieve so that they can focus on what the issues are or what the goals are for that particular meeting.
When we use the word charter, is it essentially we're talking about the guidelines like no meeting shall last longer than 10 minutes? This shall be this way. This shall be that way. Is that kind of what it is?
It's yeah. So it's just a set of rules and guidelines. So like you, depending on the team charter you want to build, like you can have a team mission statement, a team vision statement, and then it kind of rolls up into what the organization. So the reason why the team exists, what the team's going to do to meet their vision statement, and then you have like their guidelines and kind of rules and your values that add in that everyone kind of collectively believe in, right? So the team believes in quality, everyone agrees on this, yes, everyone agrees that we should be producing quality, everyone should be producing, we should be flexible. And then when you have those situations where maybe there's a little bit of negative conflict, this team charter is your guiding, your north star, so to
Mm.
speak, where you are now, okay, hey, we're having some problems here. What is our charter? What does our charter say? Our charter says we should be nice to each other. We should be respectful of each other. And it's like, okay, so this isn't getting anywhere. We're kind of going against what we agreed upon. Now let's refocus and deal with the issue that's going on at hand, and see where we can find a solution that we can all agree on.
From a logistical standpoint, I want to focus on that charter for just a sec, because
Yep.
I think many companies don't have them. It's just kind of a free form. Certainly mutual respect and things like that. That almost, to me, kind of fits more in the company handbook territory. But the charter, the logistics, like I love the no meeting shall last more than 1 hour.
Yep.
And every company is different. You know, our weekly morning meeting she'll be no more than 15 minutes, whatever it is.
Yep.
Are there some other things that are floating out there that maybe we might not be mindful of that could or should be included in a charter?
One of the key things that I always, every team I work with, I add into their charter is a conflict resolution page or part. So the team, as we work through and we create this charter, you usually could take up to about an hour or so to create one.
Mm-hmm. There's
one section I always create is, okay, what are you guys going to do if you run into a conflict? If there's a disagreement, if you're in a meeting where tension starts getting a little too high, how do you want to deal with that? And I've seen some suggestions where it's like, okay, if we're in a meeting and things get a little tense, meeting is done. Everyone takes a 5-minute break, walks out of the office, takes a little bit of a walk, and we come back and we focus on this and we just recap what the issue is and then look at a potential solution. So that something like that gives everyone that time to relax, to just kind of maybe kind of mumble under their breath or just take a little bit of a quick walk, come back, and then they can be a little bit settled down and they know that, okay, it's not personal. The issue is not personal. We just got to solve this issue and we got to work together to solve that problem. It's like no different than, and I'm sure we've all experienced this, and I know we've all seen it, is like if you write an email and there's a little bit of emotion involved in that email, instead of hit send right away, walk away, come back, reread it, and see, okay, now that you've got a fresher perspective on it, how can you write it so that doesn't sound emotional, that you're focused on that particular issue?
I believe if there's any takeaway today, that is probably the most important one, that many of us will be in a situation where you just type or text and just hit send. If you even take 10 seconds, ideally take 10 minutes and come back to it, you're probably not going to send it. You're probably not.
Oh, and I've done that. I know
Sure.
I've responded.
Do it all the time.
And the emotions come out and it's like, hold on. Okay, I know my blood pressure's up. I know my heart rate's getting up. Do you know what? I'm just going to take a walk. I'm going to get a coffee. Mm-hmm. Well, mind you, adding a stimulant to a body is not probably the best thing to do, but still, that's that opportunity to at least walk away from the screen.
Decaf.
It's that opportunity to walk away from the screen and taking like 5-10 minutes just to get your mind away from that particular issue. And then another trick I was told to help out is read it out loud. So as you read it out loud and you can hear what you're saying and what you've written, then you're like, oh, no, okay, I don't like how that doesn't sound too good if someone tries to read it that way, right? So you're trying to write the email in a fashion that it is taking your time. Same thing with a team in a meeting. You just take a step out, walk back in. But also with that team charter, you're now, other people on that team should be holding those individuals accountable, saying, hey, you're going against the team charter. Remember, we said we're going to be respectful for each other. Let's kind of take a breath and let's see how we can get to the solution.
When there is conflict, how should that be resolved? Is there any way that we can come up with ways? Let's say we're designing a charter for our company and we want to put stuff in there. When there is a conflict between team members, or could even be a conflict between the team and a vendor or whatever it might be, what's the best practice for resolution?
I think probably the biggest thing I always tell the teams is never take anything personally. So if there's something that's going on, it's more than likely it's a process issue somewhere. There's something going kind of maybe not going the right way, the way you expect. But if I'm presenting to you, Steve, that okay, here I have a problem, and for you'd focus on, okay, focus on the problem. Like, I'm not yelling at you, or I might be raising my voice, but I'm not yelling at you because of what you did. I'm maybe upset about the actual situation. So everyone takes that step back and just kind of refocus. Like, oh, okay, you almost repeat it. It's like, okay, so what you're saying, Jeremy, is this, right? Yes. Oh, okay, now let's work together and try to get through. So there's plenty of techniques out there to try to kind of level the emotions and focus on the solution. And those are kind of what I do. Is like, I either repeat, I take a step back, maybe if things get a little too heated, stop the meeting for about 5 minutes. Everyone can take a quick breather, come back, and focus on the problem.
Have you been involved in working with a client where those things come up, those challenging situations come up and you're called upon?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
It happens a lot. I've been, my career is gone over 30 years. So if I were to sit there and say, no, that's never happened, and then I've had like a very blessed career for 30 years. But it's usually, and that's when I kind of take those breaths and understand that, like, about 15, 20 years ago was when I figured, I was like, hold on, someone's not upset at me. They're just upset at something that happened. Like, they're angry at something that happened. I may have been a part of it, maybe something I did, but I didn't do anything in any sort of malicious way. It just happened. Okay, let's try to find a solution.
Big challenge. And it
Yeah,
rests on you and on your shoulders. Like, it's almost as if you become, you didn't sign up to be the mediator, but you
no.
usually are the outside entity that might be the voice of resolution.
Yeah, and I've like, again, my current client right now, and I've gone through a few meetings where I was just there to observe, and then after there'd be tension would rise, and then I would just kind of I would break it up by asking a question. I would just ask as an observer, it's like, oh, okay, so when you guys talk about this, is this how it kind of flows? And then what that does is it just almost switches their brains. Like, hold on, okay, hold on. Now let me explain this particular thing to
Hmm.
Jeremy so that he can understand what's going on. And normally when I've done that a few times where I've done that. I didn't really like, I was interested in the information, but I wanted them to shift their focus and then go back to looking at the actual problem. And I found that when you do that, everything settles down, and then they talk about the problem and they got the resolution they needed.
Without detail, full confidentiality, I'm curious what the challenge centered around. Like, can you tell us, like, basics?
Basics. It was, what happened was there was I guess a support ticket that was sitting there and no one touched it for a few months, and it should have been looked at. And yeah, there's a lot of people started getting angry, and there was no fault of anyone. And really, what it was a fault of the actual process itself that
Hmm.
caused that ticket to stay there. And they're trying to blame. There's a couple individuals that are blaming this one individual, and it was just one of those, like, okay, it's not right, because it's making the person feel bad, and they just doing their job. So all I did was I just asked the questions, like, oh, so what does that system do? Like, what caused this? Like, was it just this one client that had this issue? And then they kind of looked at me and they started answering the questions, like, oh, okay, so you guys know what you got to do to fix it, right? Yeah, all right, go ahead, fix it. And then that took the pressure off that individual that was responsible for managing these tickets. And it took it off a bit. And they understood that, okay, now we got to maybe change our process a little bit, our guidelines in dealing with these type of tickets. So then they won't have to run across that again.
Do you find that many times the process or the flow within a company is not really there until you start peeling the layers back? Like, some don't know. I don't know. I was supposed to do that. I don't know. I was supposed to do that. How is that supposed to work? Like, everybody is on a different page.
Yeah. And normally that have like, usually obviously a company will have their guidelines, like, here's our process, boom, boom, boom. They all have their steps. But then over time, if no one reviews those steps, people will start not not being malicious, but they'll find a way to make the flow easier for them, or maybe they'll skip through, or
Mm.
maybe there's additional work that's coming in. There's a lot of different variables that can happen, But if it's not being reviewed on a regular basis as a team to be and agreed upon as a team, if someone does one thing a little bit different, then everyone could start getting upset about it. And or sometimes you just forget about it, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh, we have to do this process. I've ran one client where they had to go through have an internal audit for their technology and for their process for software development. Everyone was they were doing their own thing, they were providing their results, but what happened was the external auditor came in and looked at what the flow was, what the like look at the documentation. So okay, here's your flow, boom, boom, boom. And then when they started reviewing what the work was being done, they changed the teams themselves, kind of looked at it and started changing the way they are doing things, which wasn't exactly to what the documented flow was. And they started getting dinged by the auditor saying, hey, you guys are not compliant because you're not doing what you're saying you're supposed to do.
Wow.
But they were still getting the results. Like what they did was perfectly fine. Like they weren't being malicious or creating any data issues like for customer data or stuff like that. They just found a new way of getting to the work done and being efficient.
Is that the flow something that would go in the charter? Would you put that in there?
I think you would no in the charter you'd put in maybe maybe a sentence saying, okay, we review the flow as a team, we review the flow every 2 months, or we
Okay.
review the flow every month. You don't want to. The charter itself is meant to be a very kind of one page, very straightforward. This is how we're going to react. This is how we're going to be as a team, and how we're going to work together.
Okay.
And then like it gives that kind of the internal team processes of how they're going to get their work done.
Would you even, and I'm going on the fun side here, would you even put in there, uh, we shall, everybody is invited to happy hour at O'Malley's every second Friday of the month. And first drink is on the company, or whatever it is. Would that be something reasonable to put in there, or is that too fluffy, if you will?
Well, it's a team building, like it's a team building exercise, like or going out to have a drink, or even just to go out socially outside of the office. And yeah,
Sure.
you can put that in saying, yep, every 2 weeks, every second Friday, we're going to
Yep.
whoever's invited, everyone's invited on the team. We're going to meet
Right.
at again O'Malley's, and away you go.
Yeah. Attendance is optional. So that's
Yep.
the other. So many times I've heard from people working in companies where they have to show up for certain things. And that's
Yeah.
maybe there's a reason for it. But many times they just complain like, oh my God, I have to go to this thing. I don't want to.
Yeah.
And I guess it's an uncomfortable situation. The intent, I get it. We're trying to bring people together. But
Yep.
then sometimes the employees maybe not on board. What do you do in that situation? Final thought here. I guess company holiday parties are different
Yeah.
where, it's more of a respect thing to show up.
Yeah.
Where do you force employees to do things that is really maybe not a part of their job?
Uh, for me personally, and for the teams I've managed and the clients I work with, you don't
Okay.
force it. Everyone should be like, unless it's like a very formal, to say a town hall. Okay, everyone have to go to a town hall. But if it's something that is kind of outside of the work environment, again, like a Christmas party, or again, like every second week going to O'Malley's and like that, it's people should feel comfortable that, hey, if I don't want to go, I don't have to.
Hmm.
If I can't go, I don't feel guilty or trying to rush, because all of us have lives outside of work.
Yep.
And I think it's giving the respect for that, saying, hey, okay, you have to pick up your kids after you go work from school. Completely get it. I'm not going to force you to go to a bar
Right.
and you're going to stress out or have to figure out how to get a ride in. So
Gotcha. Appreciate your transparency and your honesty, and even the examples from the companies that you work with. If somebody wants to change it up at their company, see more of a cohesive team, maybe more profits, get this all together, how do they reach out to you, Jeremy?
they can reach out to me through our website at berriaultandassociates.com. So BERRIAULT and associates, all one word.com. You can also reach out to me through my phone at 416-209-4198.
Great having you here. I love all the things that we talk about. It's so relatable to any company, big or small, and a lot of stuff that they have to figure out how to get through and sometimes don't. And that's where you step in. Thanks for being here again.
Yeah, it's always a pleasure. Thank you.
Same. We'll be right back.
Are you looking for even more of the podcasts and hosts that you love? The Podcast Business News Network is proud to announce that you now have even more ways to listen live. Check out the MyTuner Radio, online radio box, and Simple Radio apps on iOS and Android, or find us online. Search for Business News Network on mytuner-radio.com, or search Podcast Business News Network on streama.com and onlineradiobox.com/US. Take your podcast on the go and don't miss a minute of the action.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
For nearly 2,000 severely injured veterans, everyday life has become filled with barriers.
Day-to-day simple tasks can become pretty daunting.
I have to carry my chair up 2 flights of steps or have somebody do it for me.
What scares me the most is just the falling.
When I'm struggling with my house, I think, to have that one great barrier just knocked down, it's crucial.
Home for Our Troops is a wonderful nonprofit that builds a
Mortgage-free, fully adaptive, handicap-accessible house. And there's no catch.
It'll be our very first home that we've ever owned.
This is a game changer.
This is where your life begins again.
We need you to join us in completing this important mission. Please visit hfotusa.org and help build homes and rebuild lives.
Because of you, everything's going to be okay.